Okay. I just had to fix a little something there. The music is not supposed to be playing, and my little monitor said that the program was not running, but the music bar, this little thing that shows the signal going in and out. If there's sound or something, it's supposed to show a little line. Anyway, it was moving, so that meant some sort of music was playing, but it wasn't supposed to be playing. So there, I turned it off. And that's because there's, as I said on the previous streams, apparently some sort of background dispute going on regarding the Nakarada music that we use. Alex Nakarada composes music, and we have permission to use it, but there's something going on in the background, and the background, something or other, might be enough to trigger like a muting, I guess, of our stream, and we don't want it muted, or worse yet, we don't want it not streaming or not showing up on YouTube. But this is Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, and I'm going to get back to the Apollo today. If you had been with us on Wednesday or watched it subsequently, you would have seen that I successfully, I think, pretty much masked the hull of the submarine. And I would pick that up and show it to you, but I don't want to move it any more than is absolutely essential, because things can break, and I don't want them to break. So I successfully spent like hours putting masking tape on the submarine. And then after I did that, I rotated it and found some spots that I missed and had to redo them. And then I rotated again and said, oh, how could I miss that? And then I forgot that. And eventually it got done. But it was too cold yesterday in my well-ventilated space. I am going to be painting it basically the primer that I'm using, because it's the perfect color for a submarine hull. It's like a flat gray. Anyway, it looks a whole lot better than the raw plastic, so I was just going to use the primer. And my well-ventilated area was just too cold to use it yesterday. I'm hoping it warms up enough Saturday and Sunday so that I can get a spray painted, and on Monday I can do a reveal, an unmasking of the Renwall submarine, and finish the last bits. There's just assuming that goes okay, and the unmasking goes okay, I have just little bits of things that need to be done, and then the submarine will be finished. I need to install a dive plane without breaking off the little prong that goes into the hole. Yeah, the little bits that need to be done, that bit is got me a little bit worried, because it's a fragile piece and it could break off. I need to cement on or glue on the propeller. I'm going to do that very, very last, because the propeller breaks very easily. Of the 3 kits that I have, the propeller was broken in all 3 of them, because the blades on it are really pretty fragile. In fact, they break off more easily than the whole thing breaks off from the sprue or the tree that it was attached to when it was molded. But so that'll be the last thing. So between the first thing that I will do after I unmask it, which is putting the dive plane on and hopefully not breaking it, and if I do, then I'll have to get out the other ones, is I'm going to install a missile, a Polaris missile that looks like it's being launched from the one tube that actually has a spring in it that's supposed to launch them. I think that's kind of a nice little decorative thing that I can do. And then I might have to do some paint touch-up on the cutaway edges and on the periscopes and radio antenna and things that come up, that lift up from the sail or conning tower. Because I'm leaving those in while I'm spray painting it, I made a decision to just leave those, so they might get a little bit stuck. And the spray paint that I'm painting them might be a slightly different color than the color I painted them originally. So I might have to do a little touch up on those. So, those little tiny bits of things sometimes take a lot of time. And then there's always I forgot this, I can't believe it, or this fell apart and I need to replace it, or there's always those kinds of things that happen. But I'm hoping that I can get it spray painted over the weekend and then get done on Monday, because it would be really nice to actually finish it. And then after I need to cement the interior display hull, the main part of the submarine, the kit itself, onto the stand. I need to attach that with, I don't know, I might use model cement, I might use Gorilla Glue, I might use, I'm going to use some sort of adhesive. That's probably a really good place to use like cyanoacrylate, the super glue kind of thing. But I don't happen to have any, and I'm not going to run out and get it just for this, because there are other alternatives. But I'm working on the Apollo. This is the assembly instructions for the Apollo. And the part I'm working on now is the escape tower. There's rockets motors on the base of it here, that if something goes wrong down here on the Saturn V, it lifts the command module up away from everything else and high enough so that I can parachute down. And this big long tube here is basically a solid fuel for a rocket motor. And this is just turning out to be more of a pain in the butt than I thought it would. Actually, there's seams on here I'm trying to sand out so that they don't show, and that I've done that with just moderate success on the missile tubes on the other thing. And the assembly of this lattice work down here is really a pain in the butt too, because there's like 4 pieces in a ring and they all have to come together and be held. And anyway, I'll show that to you later. I'll probably be spending most of the stream today just playing around with different ways of assembling that. And I'll also be doing some sanding. Up at the top here, there's 2 little doors. This is another rocket motor. I don't know if you can see it up here. Okay, that little black dot and the silver thing. The very, very tip of this has other little rocket motors, because once this gets high enough that it no longer needs the escape tower, then these doors open up and this little rocket motor ignites and it lifts the escape tower off of the command module, and it burns up or lands on somebody's lawn or something. So that's there. This whole I'll just talk about it as I go along. Like I said over and over, I'm not a master model maker. I just learned as much as I learned when I was a young teen, when I was building models, and little bits I picked up since then. So this is not a how-to show. This is an old guy trying to build a model that he bought that he thinks is pretty cool. And then trying to figure things out as he goes along. Yeah. So those of you who are master modelers out there, you can be amused. Or if you want to in chat, you can even post some suggestions. The other thing that's really cool about this model is the Apollo story. This came with the kit. And it's written in just this amazing flowery language and has these kind of fun illustrations. Because this kit was, I think, released in 1969 originally. Or at least this was written. It was copyrighted 1969. So this was written, I think this was actually written before the flight actually occurred. So this was written in anticipation of how it would work. Anyway, it's got really cool 1960s pictures. The kit itself apparently was reissued in the 80s. It's called a History Makers. And I'm not going to, I'll show you the box top in a little bit because I want to talk about colors, but it's really pretty neat. The escape tower, well, the pieces come apart, so you can reenact if you want to. You can use this kit to reenact the entire Apollo mission. In fact, the instruction manual shows how that works. But, you know, the escape tower, and then the command module, and the service module, and then the docking, not the docking bay, but the bay in which the LEM sits, and the LEM itself are all separable. And the service module has doors that open so you can see the interior detail. Even the hatch on the command module comes out so you can see little models of astronauts and you can look inside. And then the LEM thing, these things fold down. I mean, they fold down like a model, like a plastic model, not like the real thing, but you can take the LEM out. And the LEM is in two components. There's the, you know, the landing part with the legs and the landing motors and stuff. And then there's the ascent stage. So you can take that out and that you can, you know, land it on the moon and take off. And they even have a base that's got like craters and stuff on it. So you can land it on this little base. These are all the pieces, and they all come apart and they display nicely and all of that. So yeah, I'm working on the escape thing. I'm going to then skip to the service module because the command module has some issues that I need to address. The control panels on the inside have like hardly any detail. And I'm going to see if there's like a decal or applique kit or something, because you can open the hatch and look in, and it would be nice to have like some of the toggle switches and dials and gauges and things actually show. So I'm going to see if there's an aftermarket thing for it. Yeah, anyway, there you can see how this all comes apart. The kit, even, and we talked about this before I opened the kit, the lunar excursion module around the base of it has a skirt that was covered with gold foil, like actual real gold mylar. And the kit actually comes with that. I was thinking about having to go out and buy some, and that would have been kind of fun, right? To do that. But I didn't have to because they provided it, which was neat. Building the lunar module is going to be kind of fun as well. You know, and then it comes back and it splashes down. Yeah, so this is the bit I'm working on, steps 1 through 5 here. And you'll see I've got some of this stuff assembled already. And I'm just sort of like, basically I'm sanding and filing and sanding and polishing and things. And then I'm going to mess around trying to figure out how best to assemble it. I also am trying to figure out how best to paint it. I'll keep saying So let me show you the cover. I don't know how the colors are going to show up on your screen. So I'm not going to be able to paint this exactly the way. Here's my color chart. Okay. But here, this is how it's supposed to look when it's done, right? And then there's all sorts of little interior detail and things like that. So I got a bunch of white paints. And the outside of it is going to be painted either the pure white or this pearl white. And there's this little bit, you know, the pure white is white. The pearl white, depending on the orientation, you can see takes on a little bit of a yellowish tinge, sometimes a little grayish tinge, that kind of thing. I'm thinking I might use that. I think it's, you know, it just looks kind of cool, and it's nice and shiny. the pure white isn't very much, then these things, okay, are really kind of almost like olive drab, and I'm torn between using this insignia white and the racing white. The racing white has a yellow tone to it, but it's like much lighter than that. I don't know. I suppose I could look around and see if I can find other colors. I'm using spray paints because I can't use an airbrush. I'm just terrible at it. It's hard to describe how terrible I am at it. Like I spill paint all over myself, getting the paint into the little containers or cups that fit onto the airbrush. And then I tilt it the wrong way and it spills some more. And then once it actually fell out, that was a mess. So that's just getting ready. And then when I spray paint, and I actually turn the spray paint on, when I try to airbrush it, that's what I mean, airbrushing. It just like doesn't go on evenly. And then there's just I make this huge mess that I try to clean up later. I'm just not going to. So, I'm tempted to use, this insignia white is not as yellow. It's not as greenish yellow as the box top shows, but it's a much nicer color. Anyway, I'll look at the instructions. The racing white comes close, but it's not saturated enough. The color isn't saturated enough. So that's the painting thing. That's the box of the model. Popping up. The instructions say, there's a color guide here. Gray, black, light green, I think goes like on the inside of the command module. Gray, silver, gold, light blue, light brown, flesh and white. Flesh is for the astronauts' faces. Looking at the color guide here, F and B, black and silver. Those are for the little rockets there. That was obvious. Give any color guide for the rocket nozzles. The painting guide for this is almost worse than it was for the submarine, and that was really, really bad. Paint them black. That's good. I'm going to look ahead here. The more time I spend talking about this, the less time I have to make a mess of things by actually working on the assembly of this model. Just curious, though, what I'm looking for is these fold down bits here, the parts that fold down and expose the lem. It says something about C. Let me just see what C is. C is light green. Yeah, so they actually really want the interior of this painted kind of a greenish color rather than gray. So I guess before I get to that point, I'll have to do some more exploring of colors that I can get, little spray cans of colors. See if I can get something that kind of matches the box top. Yeah. Oh well. Like the colors I have don't work, but I do have a color that should work on the outside of this whole thing. So yeah, I'm going to go back to this. This is the part that I'm working on. This is what I'm talking about. The command module has these control panel kinds of things, but there's no, it looks like there's detail, you know, like a CRT screen they didn't have LCDs back then and all these instruments and stuff, but no, what's F? F and G. F is gold, G is light blue. Yeah. The inside of this is painted a pleasant light blue color. I'll probably get a spray can of that too. I'll spend as much money on little spray cans of paint as I did buying this kit. And then you get to put the astronaut together. That's kind of fun. Okay, well, let's look at this. This should be simple, but for me, nothing really is. Parts. There's parts. This is not actually part of the escape tower. This is the thing into which the escape tower sits. And I have this out. I have this out because these parts, these nice long prongs go into these. And during assembly, after, playing with it just a little bit with different ways of assembling these 3 parts need to go inside of these. After playing with this a little bit, having something like this hold some of the parts, I think would be a really helpful thing to have. These are, really delicate little pieces of plastic, and contact points for cementing are really tiny. I mean, just really itsy bitsy little points. And like this ring, you can see that these tiny little prongs on the ends are supposed to go into these tiny little divots here and somehow or other hold on and not flop around. Anyway, I'm not pleased with how this thing is coming together, really, or how it needs to come together. Even these doors, so these doors here cover up the little rocket that takes the escape tower away. And one option is to cement these on, and fill in all the gaps. But the other option is to have them be open. But the contact points for the hinges, okay, I mean, they look really fine when you do it like that, right? But when you actually try to open it, it's like, they're not, again, they're tiny little pinpoints that are supposed to be on there and not break off. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this. Not as as a kid, I mean. So I think they're going to open about that far because these points need to be there. So the other thing I need to think about is painting. Maybe somebody out there can give some advice, or maybe not. I don't know. Painting, I can either paint this whole thing before I assemble it, like paint all of these parts, or I can assemble it and then paint it. And the pros and cons are that if I paint it now, okay, well, the con of waiting, talk about the con of waiting. Okay, the con of waiting is that you can see this, this lattice work kind of thing. Those could end up leaving shadows. So when I spray paint, what could happen, okay, you can begin to see, try to show you what the situation is. So even if those are being held in place, right, so that they're not flopping around, this has to be the only place to hold it. place to really grab it is here. Okay. That's not a good place because that's where the ring is supposed to go. But what I'm thinking, it goes there, and then the contact points, you can see how getting that so that the contact points are actually in place and contacting. Trying to hold this is, I have no clue how people are supposed to do this. So I'm going to just be spending a good deal of time, I think, today messing around with trying to figure out how to do that. So I'm thinking that the con of waiting to paint it is primarily that I could get shadows from all these trestles and things, and that those shadows would like keep it from being really uniformly painted. But on the other hand, you can see that if I painted this ahead of time, it's real likely that I'll somehow mess up the paint. You know, it's just going to get messed up. And as a result, I'll have to repaint it anyway, except that it'll be like less uniform. So the way the instructions suggest doing this is to cement one of these and one of those. Like, take one of these and one of these and get them together, okay? So that one is connected to the other, kind of like, you know, like that. Of course, it leaves, you know, it doesn't go well that well. You know, there's like gaps showing and things all right away. Well, maybe it would help if I turned it the right way. There we go. Duh. It's got a tiny little pin there. I mean, tiny little guides, divots and pins and things. So they say, do this, attach the ring up here, okay? And then basically it says hope that the ring will create the right angle so that it won't be trapezoidal or rhomboid, but square. And I have to admit that if that worked, if this subassembly actually worked the way it was supposed to, it would make assembling the rest of it a bit easier, because it's, you know, you can see it's possible to do that, to put these pieces like that together. And it probably would be possible to get the ring inserted. I don't know. The ring goes up here. So somehow or other, while one is doing that, this little ring, this is where you need like 4 hands. This little ring is supposed to go here and here. And not droop, because it's supported on 2 sides, and keep this at a right angle. I don't know. What I'd like, though, and this is why I'm thinking maybe using contact cement, is I'd like to have some flexibility. You know, if this was model cement, it would harden and wouldn't, like if I had to move this a little bit, okay? Like if it was not exactly a 90-degree angle, right? If it was like off a little bit, and then I put the other part on, and I had to rotate on there just a little bit to fit, the model cement would just crack. I mean, it would either not give or probably not the cemented part, but one of the other pieces would crack as I tried to do that. So what this subassembly is doing is it's saying, take on faith that if you put these together and get the ring in place, that the angles will all be right and that the other two parts will fit perfectly. And I don't believe that. I just do not believe it. So that's why I'm thinking the better part of valor might be to get this whole thing assembled without glue or cement. Okay. Even 3 sides of it potentially could leave the final side, attic. But if I could remember to keep putting the parts in the right way. And this is just temporary, because this whole thing is supposed to lift up off of this cone, which is supposed to stay on the command module. So I'm thinking that if this whole thing were like held in place, I'm thinking maybe tape. Okay, if I could get the parts to be where they should all be, at least 3 sides, not all of them, that the odds are higher than, better than 0 at least, that that they'll all be aligned. But it's just, I don't know, it's really a pain. Contact cement, if it holds, will give that kind of flexibility to it. And when it's all assembled, it's it'll be a fairly solid piece, so that flexibility won't matter. But until it gets to that point, I'm just baffled. Okay, so this, I got filler in on the seams and around here as well, where these seams come together. And okay, it looked like it went in, but it's out. I'm going to be polishing this down and see if the seams are being covered. The putty I'm using is, a modeling plastic putty, and it's supposed to fill these in and give a nice clean surface, but it doesn't always do that. And so if there are still seams showing after I polish these, I have a couple of alternatives. Actually, up here, this is a problem. But this is a real prominent part of the model, and I would like it to look good. So I have all sorts of different grits of sandpaper. This is 600. That's going to bite pretty hard. I think I'm going to be using mainly the 2000 for polishing. Okay, maybe the 800 for an initial go, but I don't like scratch marks all over it. And then the 1000, I also have this other stuff, which is, I think, like 1600 or something. It's an interim and a really nice balsa wood sanding block, kind of wedge shaped and all. Yeah, well, I'm going to do some sanding here. I'm going to start on the seams, the side seams. Those are the biggest ones. I'm trying to be really careful right up here. There's little lines etched and built into the rocket, and that'll show with the gloss paint. So when I get up there, I'll be more careful than I need to be down here. But I want to see how this works. hopefully it will work okay. I'm not sure if the sanding, yeah. I'm going to use this to keep the contact point fairly small. So I have two other fillers that are not made for modeling, but I've used them or tested them, and they actually work okay. One is spackling, used for walls, and I tested it, and it sands to a smooth surface, but I think that there's some texture involved in it, that it's sort of porous, which is really fine if you're using wall primer, latex primer for walls. I think it's fine for that, but it might not work for this, because the difference in texture, the porosity of it, could very well just show up even under a coat of primer and paint. So I'm not sure I want to use that unless I test it with the paint. Okay. And the other stuff I bought is Bondo, and I've used that on a model before. Auto body putty. And auto body putty dries really hard and sands to a really fine finish. I mean, it just does. It's a little bit messy to use, but I know it would accomplish that which I'm trying to accomplish, which is to get a nice, hard, smooth surface. This is like little ridges that you can't even see. All of this is white on white on white. So it's like white plastic putty on white plastic to be primed white, right? To be final coated with white paint, which means everything is supposed to look exactly alike. At some point, I'm going to take my glasses off. I can see better up close without them. There's nobody been in chat. Nobody's been in chat on Wednesday or today. I'm beginning to be concerned that, well, I'm just concerned because it could be one of two things that I can think of, and neither of them is particularly good. One is that there's just nobody watching, much less chatting. Okay, and that would be sad. Really hoping that somebody is watching this. Or the other is that the chat isn't working, and that people are chatting, but I'm just not seeing it. That would be less bad. It wouldn't be great, but it'd be less bad than if there's just nobody out there enjoying relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons at all. And this is good. I can kind of feel with the sandpaper whether it's biting on something or not, and if it is, then that's plastic putty that needs to come off. Right here, it feels really smooth. I can still see a seam, but I can't tell, it's just a difference in color. I can't tell whether that means it's going to show up after it's painted or not. I can, and I run my fingernail over it. Definitely still feeling it. I think there's a slight difference in really odd. There's something going on there. I think you can even see it on the camera. Okay, the seam. I think maybe the two sides are not aligned like perfectly, so that one is like raised up compared to the other. I don't know. I might need to be playing with this a good long time before it ends up the way I want it. You know, sometimes you get these circular things like the missile launch tubes, right? And they don't. The two sides, once they're cemented together, don't perfectly align. Like one is a tiny fraction of a millimeter, even above or below the other. And when that happens, that becomes really obvious when it's painted. And it should be possible, to sand down the one that's higher so that it matches the one that's lower. And I can run my finger over it and I can feel like there's a little ridge there. Use the 800 grit here for just a bit. Yeah, this is relaxing, ditzing around, tiny little. I'm thinking that as I sand this, that the visible thing is. I think it's actually working. I don't know if you can see it here, but the visible gap kind of disappears here, which is what it's supposed to do. I'm not really wanting to use a coarser grit. I want to be spending forever sanding out scratch marks. On the other hand, I don't want to be spending forever not getting anything done. This thing dark. There must be something on the sand. Oh, there is. Okay, that's interesting. something on the sandpaper that it's leaving some dark marks, but that might be more helpful than that. Okay, yeah, when it gets to the point that I can't really see it, it also gets to the point where I can't really feel it. I don't want to flat spot this stuff. On the other hand, what I was using this on before, but there's brown. Oh, I know. I was using it on the base of the submarine, and it picked up brown paint. Right here, you can see the line. I think you can see it. You can see the line, and right there it disappears. And right there, I have what I'm trying to accomplish, which is not having a ridge. So this is going to take forever. But, you know, what else is there to do on Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons than do like this kind of sanding, I guess. And just think, after I've done this, and I get to do the other side, and then up here where these two parts fit, that's really not good. Those did not fit together very well at all. The diameters of the two parts are apparently not exactly the same. So that's going to take some adjusting. So after I'm done, eventually it'll be done, using this whatever 800 grit stuff. Let me polish it with the 2000, because textural differences will show up under the gloss paint. I'm trying not to flat spot it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm finding this kind of relaxing. It's taking forever. I'm really good at doing these kinds of boring, mindless things because I can just go like brain dead. Unfortunately, if I go brain dead here as I'm doing this relaxing sanding, you won't hear anything, and there's not much to see other than in this. So it actually isn't bad. It's just taking a long time. But what's good is that I can see the progress here. Having that brown paint on the sandpaper and having it get into like here where you can really feel that there's this difference there, having that on there actually turned out to be helpful. I'll have to remember, it's right here on the corner, to use that. So I'm going to end up probably spending like forever doing this, right? Getting rid of the seam on the side of the rocket. This is, I think, fortunately, like one of the very few places on the entire model where this kind of has to be done. There's some other things like in the service module. There are some like fuel tanks and things that are that are done as two halves, and the same sort of thing will have to be done there as I'm doing here. I wish I felt comfortable using a serious grit, a coarser grit, but I'm not sure I want to, because I've had that experience before where I just end up with a whole lot of scratch marks that need to be sanded out, and I don't end up saving any time, It's like, pay me now or pay me later. So yeah, I either end up, now I can still see the seam, really not feeling it anymore, which is what I've been going for. So yeah, I can either, use this fine grit, semi-fine grit down here to get this, roughed in and then polish it, or else I can use a coarser grit and then have to spend even more time polishing. I hope this is worthwhile. I hope that when it's actually spray painted, it'll look right. And I hope that selecting the pearl white paint is the right thing to do in terms of how this is going to end up looking. I mean, I think it might not be like an exact match to the paint that the Apollo spacecraft actually used, but I like the gloss. It's got a little bit of yellow to it, so it's not just bland white, pure white, right? Trying not to get impatient here. I don't want to get impatient and then end up like right down here at the bottom. There's actually a big discontinuity between the two sides. It's really tempting to grab the 600 grit. Or even the file. Yeah, I am not going to use the file on this. That will leave really unpleasant marks on it. So I'm just going to go at this until it's okay. I don't think I'm flat spotting it too much. No matter what I do, there's still going to be some evidence of the seam. It'd be a whole lot less than it would be if I didn't mess with this. We'll see after it's primed. Okay. I don't know. I'm doing my best here. I hope my best is good enough. So anyway, this model, let me tell you about Dyson Dungeons while I'm doing relaxing sanding here with Dyson Dungeons. if I were Ole Brager, and you should watch Ole Brager's streams. Ole Brager is a master landscape minifig modeler. I mean, really, really amazing. Does amazing work. Recently built a Dungeons and Dragons player table, all from scratch. I don't know why we say that. Didn't have any scratches in it because he spent hours and hours sanding. But unlike me, Ole Brager did not live stream or record and then play back hours and hours of sanding. Ole Brager spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours editing, so that the viewers were not subjected to what you're being subjected to here. So the only thing that can be said about this really is, it's not the only thing. One could say a lot of things. One of the things that one could say about what's happening here is that if you keep at it, eventually it gets done. You know, if I keep grinding away at this with the sandpaper, which I am doing, eventually it will look as good as I can get it, which will be, I hope, a little better than adequate. Anyway, if you want to watch somebody not sanding, but see the results of the sanding, nonetheless, you can catch Ole Brager's stream. Here, I'm going to continue to work at this, trying to, I could probably put the camera down closer, couldn't I? Yeah, as long as I try to stay on camera. You can see the white on white on white. Then you can see the tiny bits of color still here. That tells me that I need to keep sanding away at that. At least I know that this stuff is working because it turns white. So it's taking stuff off very slowly here. This is going to take a while down at the base. There's really kind of I mean, my fingernail catches on that. So there's a big ridge there that needs to be sanded down. So the painting part of this, you know, is if I assemble it, if the whole thing is assembled and then I paint it, you know, I guess I can just get it under decent light in a well-ventilated area and rotate the model carefully in many, many different directions and get the paint, despite the shadows that one might get from this lattice work, shadowing what's behind it, you know, holding it up, moving it around, turning it, looking at it from different directions, I can get it painted. I think I'm going to do that. There will be a couple of the other challenges are, this one's going to be kind of interesting, is if you can see in these instructions here, these little rocket nozzles, these are those aren't the motors. This is the motor. Okay. This long tube is full of solid rocket propellant. And it flames out of these nozzles, and the nozzles go in the base of this cone. And the outside of this cone, you can see it up here, goes here. But these are painted like black and steel. I mean, really dark metallic. I don't think it's possible to put them in after this is all assembled, but I don't want them painted white. So I'm going to somehow, after this is assembled, figure out how to mask them. Okay, so that, anyway, that's one of the challenges, is how to get I want to paint them before I put them in. But then I need to figure out how to not overpaint them when I paint this entire tower, which will be at the rate I'm going sometime in that 2026. That's the way it's starting to feel. Why? Oh, good grief. Getting impatient. I'm going to impatiently use a little bit of the 600 grit. I hope this isn't a mistake. Using it lightly. But that bites really quickly compared to the 800. Each change in grit makes a huge difference. It's really surprising. Fast. You know, that might be worth a chance. Their grit. Because it does get down to where I want it to go pretty quickly compared to 800. I mean, just hope that I can polish it out. You can hear it. Sorry. Just looking at this and wondering. Be really careful here because there's little raised lines of detail that I don't want to make disappear. is you cement these things together, try to get them perfectly aligned, right? So you can't see that one is slightly higher than the other. And then no matter what, they're not. With the gloss paint, just tiny little variations like that are going to show. Really glad this is kind of a sturdy piece so that I can do this kind of rubbing on it without breaking it apart. Starting to see where the issue is. Here too, that's pretty visible. Begin to see why, like master modelers, they'll buy a kit maybe, but they probably are better off just like making their own part. But I can see that, you end up spending probably 3/4 of your time just fixing the problems with the original plastic kit. I wish I was a little more ambidextrous. Here's, I'm doing it much more slowly because of those little rings, those little raised edges. You can see them there. So the other thing is that after this is all painted white, the inside of this needs to be painted black without getting any black paint around the outside edge. And I don't know, I don't think it's really possible to paint it black and then clean up around the outside and then mask it somehow. I'm just not going to get clean edges. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. I think touching up the gloss white paint after it's painted is going to be a real challenge if I need to try to do that. Get white sanding dust all over my pants. So those are going in the laundry, I guess. What I'm seeing is just the change in the gloss between the sanded part and the knot. I'm going to polish this now. This is older, but I've used it pretty successfully in terms of polishing in the past, and it seems to not fill up as quickly as the other stuff. Getting a little weird discoloration down here. I guess I can still kind of feel that. And go back to the 1,000 for a moment. I'm not sure what that was there. I'm getting tempted to like prime this. Well, I know that I'll be priming it and then rechecking it. And then maybe like I did with the missile tubes, I found that some of them after they were primed, there were just obvious seams and flaws in them. And I was able to, since it's just primed, fix those and reprime it. After I put the yellow gloss on, there were 2 or 3 of them that had like serious issues of gaps, and I was able to fill in the gap with paint. That way you should probably do it, but it worked. This right up at the top here is, where's my 800? There it is. Yeah, I just didn't want to get impatient, but here it's not quite right. I can still feel the discontinuity there. Here, let me get it back on camera. It's coming along, and I think it's going to look okay. I think. I mean, I won't know till it's painted, but I can tell you it looks a lot better than it did before I did all of this, which one would hope would be the case, right? That messing around with it like this for hours, hours and hours of relentless, stupid, boring sanding would make a difference in the final appearance. Of course, that's always, what happens then is that you do all this prep work and then the paint bubbles up or drips or something, right? Since I am not that good at airbrushing, terrible at that. Doesn't, it kind of translates into spray painting as well. Not that good at it. Bit of polish here. Well, let's talk about it to fill the airtime. It's just as well that no one's paying attention. So what was most amazing about the Apollo program, this is back in the day when, I guess, wow, that's that's just amazing. I don't know what that is. Yeah, good that I checked that. Those there's a I can catch my nail on that, which means that it goes just one way. The gap, because it kind of catches in both directions, which means that it's not just one side is higher than the other. It means that there's an opening there that isn't filled in. If I go across this way, what it might be, what it would ordinarily have thought it would be that that's just a discontinuity where one side was higher than the other, but it seems to catch in both directions, which suggests that that's a gap, an opening. And that just a little bit more and see what happens. Other, otherwise, I think there's like an indentation or a gap there that needs to be filled. It's almost imperceptible. I can just catch it with my nail. And I thought maybe it was just this side was a little higher. Seem to be able to catch it in both directions. This is up here. It's a case of one side being higher than the other. Still, I'm not sure what's going on there. think that if there is in fact a gap there, I'm going to, before the break, whenever that happens, in about half an hour, I'm going to use it's really tiny. I mean, whatever it is, it's a really tiny gap that the paint actually might fill in, but then might not. I'm going to use the spackling compound on that, because it should be small enough that a textural difference won't show. But if there's a gap there, it will show. I don't know. It's just it's a place to experiment with it. And it might turn out to be better than if I don't. So give it a try, just to do it. I've got another side to do, which is just like this side. It'll probably take just as long. And then I've got the top here. Spackling will dry pretty quickly. It might be ready to sand down after break if I put it on just before break. I could put it on now, but the problem with doing that is that I will get my fingers in it and spread it all over the place. It'll be really messy. So this around the edge here, where this cone went down to here. Oh, and then there's a seam here. Okay. This is going to be a problem. So I'm going to work on this now. Pieces come together and don't quite match. Leave gaps. Anyway, well, whatever. It is what it is. And in this case, it isn't all that great. In terms of fit, the fitting together of the parts. Yeah, there's a tiny little nose cone that's up here too, and there was a gap, of course, between that and the thing below it. That was probably copyrighted. Dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. Probably end up like having the whole stream deleted from the internet because I did a dumb sound. It's just the way things are on the internet nowadays. If you're committing a crime, then it's fine. They'll never stop you or catch you or anything. But if you just innocently hum to yourself, sue you because of dum-de-dum-de-dum copyright violation. I'm sure there's that. I'm just complaining about things. When you get to be a certain age, That's just kind of a dumb thing. Everybody's a certain age. I can't say that. There are some people who are an uncertain age. They're not really sure. Their records weren't really kept of births and birth dates, or just sometimes everybody celebrates their birthday on January 1st or something, as opposed to the day they were actually born. Some people are like born right on right at midnight, right? I mean, which side of midnight was it? When do you count? So some people are of an uncertain age. I am of a fairly certain age. At my age, I get to whine and complain about everything. I probably should complain about the youth, right? Isn't that a thing? I was just reading on book reviews. Read magazine that has book reviews, and they were reviewing books about people complaining about young people these days, meaning people between like the ages of 12 or 13 and 25. And the reviewer basically said, this is just constant. I think there's probably an apocryphal. I don't think it's real apocryphal. Yeah. Quote from Plato or somebody who was in ancient Athens, like in 450 before the Common Era, or BC, depending on what you prefer nowadays. Complaining about the youth, and basically saying the same thing that we say now about anybody who's a young whippersnapper. That never made sense. What's a whippersnapper? Someone who snaps whips? Back when there were buggy whips or something? When you snap them? It's one of those odd words that exists and used to be used and now isn't anymore. Could bring that back, though, because it's kind of a nonsensical word. Whippersnapper. Why not? So I'm not going to complain about the youth, whatever that is. Old enough now that I've gone through generations of youths, each of whom had problems according to people who weren't in their age cohort. What is with this? Why is it just... the filler? Is the filler just flaking off? But the seam there is not going away. Just not at all. I mean, it looked like it was, but I'm feeling it, and it's just not. And it's a tiny little thing, right? It's just this little cone on the top. One would think that this would be like a really simple thing. I'd expect it to be a really simple thing. And it's just not. It's being a pain in the butt. Another pain in the butt. This whole model is a pain in the butt. Why did I start it? Why didn't I build a Fink model? So, Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, as you should all know by now, started out as... it was Nicole and me and I. Nicole and I, that's the correct usage. Okay, well, this coarser paper is working. Painting dungeon tiles and minifigs for our Dungeons and Dragons show, which we'll stream with a live chat on Sundays, like 3 Sundays a month. We've been doing it now for years, so it's well established. Okay, I guess this is working. It was a matter of more aggressively removing plastic. It's starting to come along. It'll just need more polishing. Yeah, much better on that. Much better. Anyway, yeah. And I keep fading in and out here. Yeah, we painted dungeon tiles and minifigs for our show, and you should watch our show because it is really good. It is an excellent Dungeons and Dragons show. Our DM, Alexis, does an amazing job of creating a world. She's created this entire world, and we have populated it with very entertaining characters. Mine is like the least entertaining because, I play the character, so you can't expect too much. I am a Furbolg fighter. I try to do Furbolgy as well as I can. At least I haven't broken it off yet. To say that, it's kind of a surprise. Polishing that bit here. Okay, use the 800 on this, down the seam down the side here. Most of this is just taking off the plastic putty that I used to make sure that there was, no gaps, even though it still ends up leaving gaps. The bane of all models are seams. The seams become unseemly. And tries as I am here to unseam the unseemly seams. Sometimes it works and they disappear well. Sometimes it doesn't, and there's still little gaps that didn't get filled in. I don't know. Sometimes there's discontinuities in the plastic. It's actually coming along, I think, pretty well, except right here. I'm just not happy with the filler. It doesn't fill, Sure why. I think it doesn't harden. And what happens is that because it's sort of, it pulls out, it doesn't stay in the seam and harden as it kind of pulls out, and then it leaves a gap there where it should have filled in. So it's right there too. Like there's one down here. I know this is really pretty boring. I should talk about, is that Who? Did Who finally show up? I can do a flip. Let me see. Put my glasses on. Someone showed up on chat. I don't have my big chat screen up yet. Yep. Complaining about the youth with Dice and Dungeons, but I'm not going to complain about the youth. You know, like I said, at some point, I've been through many generations of youth, watching them become not youth. And every generation at one age complains about people who are young. It's just, you know, I guess it's the thing to do. It's a way to make a living as a writer, is write about all the things that you don't like about the youth of the day. I will do a flip though. I'll do that sooner than later. I just want to finish these bits up here and get a little polish in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to complain about the people who make money writing books about complaining about the youth. It's just really, you'll do anything for a buck? What? And what I was saying about this plastic filler is that it doesn't dry as hard as it needs to be able to be nicely, cleanly sanded. And sometimes it just ends up pulling out of the gaps that it's supposed to fill. Yeah, and this is the easy part. The hard part is going to be putting this together. For all of this, am I still feeling? Let me polish this part here. And then I'll work at the little nose cone again. I think maybe I'm just not getting the sandpaper in the right spot. Feeling this in both directions again. The gap, I mean, it's a tiny, tiny little gap, right? Just didn't get filled. I need to blame Phil for that. I'll try that. Too bad. So this ring around here, built in very well either. Can almost see that it's not, and that the parts did not fit together well. So this bit here is going to be kind of challenging, quite challenging actually. So let me move these things out of the way a little bit. I don't really need to have them here. I'm just knocking stuff over because I keep such a clean work surface. And let me do some flips. Two, three. Count if you can't see it. All right. 6. There we go. Those are pretty mediocre flips, I have to admit. Okay, this part up here, these parts didn't fit together very well. And I'm gonna work on sanding these now. Why? Because if it results in a really big gap issue, it might be able to, whatever filler I use, if I decide to use the spackle, I'm going to use it on here as well. How am I doing on time? I got 10 minutes, so let me work away at this for a few minutes. Find out as I get rid of the surplus plastic putty, the stuff that's over the top. So if this were really hard, okay, then it wouldn't do that. It wouldn't pull off. It would just stay solid and be sanded away, but it doesn't. It stays slightly rubbery, which means that when it is sanded, it will actually pull out of the gap it was meant to fill, especially when the gap is really tiny and shallow. I had some plastic putty by another manufacturer that hardens better, but is really dangerous. It basically says, if this touches your skin, cut off the offended part and give it up. He didn't say that, but it basically said, if it touches your skin, run right away and wash it off. Good luck. See, the problem there is those parts didn't even fit together. So this is going to take quite a lot of work to hand down, unless I'm willing to just say, oh, well, maybe it's supposed to look like it's 2 pieces instead of 1. I think that's the case. Yeah, this is really messy up here. This will probably take like 6 different streams before I get this right. I'm exaggerating, but probably not too much. These 2 parts apparently did not fit together very well. Not very well at all. And if a little bit of seam shows up here, I think that's okay, because in some ways this is actually a different part than this. Like, this is the fuel tank for the escape tower rockets. This is for this little rocket here to take the escape tower away. So if there's a little bit of a seam left between these two parts, that might be okay. But the problem on this side is that the parts don't line up. There's way more than just a seam. There's a discontinuity. This is just taking way more work than I had expected. I have to apologize to the viewers who are hoping actually to see something happen. You know, I have to say, I'm really sorry, but yeah, getting these parts to work together is just taking a lot more time than I had hoped. And I'm being like maybe a little bit too compulsive about getting these things, getting the seams to not show and all of that. Maybe just a little bit too much. But you know, I really like this model. I've been watching it online for a long time, and it's a really cool Apollo. It's the best Apollo model because it's got all of the components and the cutaway stuff, you know, to see the interior of the service module and having a LEM and everything. You can buy these components separately. You can get a command module, you can get a LEM module, but these are all together at a pretty good scale. You know, they're not real tiny. I've been watching this model for a long time, and I finally found one that was selling for a reasonable price. That is to say, less than the other ones I'd been watching. So actually, yeah, I'm kind of glad that this is the one that people who provided feedback when I was trying to decide which one to build after the submarine. You know, there were all sorts of different alternatives, including like the command bridge of the original series of Star Trek with really badly molded figures of Kirk and Spock. And the Savoia from Porco Rosso. That one came in second. But I was kind of glad that this one came in first because it's a really cool model, and I want it to look good, and it's just. And I thought this, you know, the escape tower, this would be a real easy thing to do, and it's just turning out to not be. Yeah, and so this plastic model putty that I said doesn't. Yeah, now this right here where I want it to sand off. Nope, it's not coming off here. Nope. Feel the gap biting against the sandpaper. You know, there's a real issue there. It's probably like a Dremel tool thing that you can get with if you're very delicate with it. That has a little polishing disc or brush or something that would make this go really fast. I'm sure there is. There's some sort of tool that I don't know about that people who do know what they're doing use. But I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not using it. So I'm just using these little bits of sandpaper and rubbing away at it until it seems like it's okay. That's a big gap. This is going to take a fair amount of sanding. This part is higher than that part by like a bunch. Here, it kind of matches up. Okay, so this just needs to be sanded smooth. But boy, on the other side, those parts just don't match. Here, there was just a big gap. Probably why they matched up, because there was a big gap that the filler actually seems to be filling. Kind of. I'm going to go at this for just a little bit more, because after break, I'm going to be working on this for like forever and ever and ever and ever, trying to get these this flare together. I want to use I don't want to use a file or coarser paper on this, because like I said, you get those file marks or sanding scratches in, and it's really a pain to polish them out. But I am using the 600 grit paper, and I don't want to go any further than that. Okay, it's getting to be break time. What I'm going to do is experiment with, remember on this side was this, my fingernail catches this in both directions, which means that there's a gap there. Why still feeling that? Catching the edge. Okay, well, I'm going to experiment with this other stuff. We'll see how it works. Can't be awful. This is basically spackling for walls. And I'm going to open this up. Put a little piece of paper towel down. I'm not sure if it'll ooze out or not. This is interesting. It goes on pink. You get that with some primer too, wall primer. It comes out pink and then it turns white when it dries. Yeah, I'm supposed to have cut off a big chunk here at the top of the nozzle, but I didn't, because I didn't want it to come out fast. I just wanted little bits at a time. I'm getting little bits. Okay, so there's seam that you can't see here. See what happens with this. We'll see if it, I may end up just, in effect, just sanding it off. I also need to open up the nozzle further because it's not squeezing out, right? Did the first time I used it. What it should be is if there's a gap in there as I'm pushing it down, it should be like getting into the gap. I should see it, but I'm not. So I don't know what's going on. To be honest, I'm not sure why I feel when I run a fingernail over it, why I feel something when I'm putting this on. It doesn't seem to be finding, it should be finding a gap, but it's not. Anyway, I'm just going to do that, and then I'll come back and plug away at that later. See what seams on these ones. Okay, well, it'll turn white. I'll sand it. It won't be any worse than it was before. This is going to take some work here because the parts, it's getting better, but it's pretty clear that they don't match up all that well. And then I have to do this side. So, yeah, probably all I'm going to accomplish today is getting this to be adequate or close to it. Maybe close to adequate. I don't know. No, yeah, I was going to put some around the top. Why not? When this is all done, I'm still going to be seeing evidence of seams and discontinuities, no matter how much I work at this. It just, the parts just aren't perfect, and when they come together, you can see where the seams were. Okay, well, do what it does. I think what I might end up doing, I actually might end up doing this, is that after I do it, get this as well as I can. It's turning white already. That's why I'm feeling it. After I get this done as well as I can, hopefully today, is that I might just prime it. And this will be a way to test the primer, but also check to see really what I'm dealing with on these seams, whether they're kind of going away or whether I still got a real issue with them. But I'm going to take a break and then come back and play with it a little bit more later. Thanks for joining in to another frustrating and inconclusive episode of Getting Nothing Done with Dyson Dungeons. I'll be back in about a half an hour and we'll continue attempting to get something done and possibly fail. Thank you. See you then. Well, welcome back to Frustrating Sanding with Dyson Dungeons. I've been trying to make this look good, and so far, it's not. So I'll just keep at it. What the heck? I think what's eventually going to happen here. The spackle's not going to work either. Eventually, what's going to happen is that I'm going to prime this and see what it looks like. Okay. I think eventually that is what's going to happen, is that it might be just, it isn't going to get any better. And some of the flaws that I'm thinking are there may or may not be there. I mean, it's not bad. Some parts of it look actually pretty good. Some parts just aren't good at all. But I probably won't know till it's painted, because some of these things are like visible as color changes, but might not be all that bad if they after they're painted, or they might be worse. I'm not sure. But I'm back from break, and I'm going to continue working on trying to smooth out the discontinuities and gaps that are present here in the tape. So, yeah, I'm going to just do my best to get this looking good or adequate or okay, as the case might be, okayer than it is now. And then I think I'll prime it and see what it looks like then. And if there might just be some little spots that need some additional work, or it might need to be very much redone. I'm not sure. But it's better than when I started. At least I can say I'm making improvements in the appearance of this thing, where the parts come together. And, and we'll see if it's improved enough to be presentable as a model that represents the Apollo. And that's what it's about, is trying to get it to be a little bit better than adequate. I want this to be, the submarine, most of it's adequate. I want this to be like an adequate plus. B plus. I'm shooting for a B plus here on this model, and hopefully it'll come to be. I'm using the 600 grit. because there's some serious discontinuities in the way these parts come together here. There's this part here is higher than that part. And then I'll use the polish. I'll polish it later. Make it all polishy. Try to get rid of any sanding marks that are left once this is done. So the spackle didn't work. Okay, it just didn't. The putty that's on here, the Tamiya plastic putty, is pretty good stuff, but it's not as good as I would hope it to be. So the remaining alternative is Bondo Auto Body Putty, which is designed for pinholes and little dents. And that's, I mean, when I'm looking at this, that's kind of what I've got. It's like little pinholes. And it's designed to harden to match the metal of the car, which means that it might be a little bit hard to sand, but it might be effective in filling essentially the pinholes. It's not good for bigger gaps, but this is about as big as a gap as I've run into on the model. It's a pretty significant gap there that seems to be mostly filled in, which is good. But here I've got the parts don't match syndrome, especially right up here. I mean, there's a real significant bump there. And one would hope that, you know, sanding like this, that the sandpaper would be mainly cutting down the high part. And blending it neatly with the rest of it. Maybe I should use like a bigger surface. Basically trying to feather this in, you know. And it's getting better, but actually getting quite a lot better. Just have to keep at it. One thing I'm happy about, not, you know, relatively happy anyway, is that the new model cement I bought to use as an alternative to the liquid. It's also liquid, but it's an little squeeze thing. Is that it's holding the parts together pretty well. The other liquid that I used on the submarine, for the most part, pieces fell apart. but I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on this, and it's still holding up okay. Yeah, it looks like it's, this is actually happening. It's actually evening out. I know this is pretty boring, and it is actually pretty boring, but if this is going to look okay, it really needs to be done. Because the parts don't align, the parts have gaps. At least I guess I should say at least I'm working with, plastic that isn't very hard. And so the sanding, even with this really fine grit paper, because I don't want to leave scratch marks all over it, it's moving along. But it doesn't make for very exciting television. It's not like even an HGTV episode or anything like that. It's just slow and you can't really see anything. It's all white on white. I'm pretty sure that once this is painted, there's going to be like little gaps that are going to show. Little, like the auto body putty says, pinhole kinds of things. So after I prime it, I'm guessing that I'm going to try the auto body putty thing and see if that works. You're supposed to even be able to use it on primer, which should be a good thing because this will probably, I've actually made progress on that. That's really pretty cool. And the seam seems to be filled in okay. I mean, this is way better. The ridge that was there, the discontinuity, isn't completely gone, but it's like 90% gone. And just how much further I want to go on it. So I guess this is worthwhile in the sense that what had been a pretty big ridge is now really close to not being there. So what I'm doing here, just to recap, is I'm working on an Apollo model. It's supposed to end up looking like this. And I'm working on this part up here, the escape thing. And I'm trying to get rid of the ridges where the parts come together and don't quite fit. And I'm trying to get rid of the gaps where they don't quite fit. Basically trying to make it look like one piece as opposed to a whole bunch of pieces cemented together. and it's coming along with some success. At some point, I'm going to say I'm not sure I can do much more with this. I'll polish it, and then prime it. And after it's primed, then I'll really get a sense of what needs to be done to make it look okay. I mean, better than it is now. But it's mostly gone as far as I can tell. I don't know how much will show. I can still feel it a little bit. And I should be able to run my finger across it and not feel it at all. Pretty close to that. One of those things you just keep at it and it gets better until it's not making progress anymore. You get this bit in here between these two, whatever they are, pipes, stabilizers, I don't know, parts of the escape rocket. And be careful not to harm that. That's a little rocket nozzle. This whole thing is the rocket fuel tank for the escape tower. That's the little rocket. This bit up here is a little rocket that pulls the escape tower away from the command module when it's no longer needed. It's like the escape tower escape rocket. This bit right here actually needs to be done pretty well because this is like the front of the model. So just the problem there is actually going to show up. There's one of those pinhole issues. That gap didn't. Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure how that's going to look. I can see that there is a pinhole there. It may or may not sand away. I don't know. I can feel it from like both directions, so that's not a helpful sign.
got quiet and there's no background music. Sorry about that. But sometimes there's that. I was paying attention to what I was doing and thinking, I don't know, this is going okay, but not great. When I was sanding down in here in this little gap, I almost took out some detail. And it's going to be painted flat black, so that's good. That's the rocket nozzle there, right there. This is silver. It has to be painted after the rest of this is painted, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure I can mask that very effectively. Might be able to. Maybe I'll try that. This thing needs to be silver right down to the edge there. It's supposed to be a nice clean edge. Is maybe I'll be able to get that. I have like 1/8 of an inch wide masking tape. I might be able to get it right along that line. I might give that a try. I might paint this first and then mask it. I might try that with the primer. I might paint this without primer. If I were better at painting, maybe it wouldn't be an issue. I don't know. So I am pretty sure what I'm going to do is prime this and then look at the flaws in the primer. And I don't know, it might be okay in most, like 90%, 95% of the places, and it might not be okay in a few other spots. And I'll try that. I know what I can do though, is in a little while, this is getting better. It's a hard place to sand. Because I don't want to get up too high on it. The sandpaper has a really nice grit to it, but it fills in and it stops working quickly. At least it feels like it. Well, what have I got left on this? I've got the seam down the side. You got the seam down this side, so let's just go to it. This one turns out, right? You got the same issue here where there's those little lines that are molded onto the rocket, visible, and I don't want them to disappear. So I have to be kind of careful as I sand up to them. I get the big long piece here done first. And then I'll go up to the edge there. I should be talking about something, to make this interesting. What can I talk about? Dyson Dungeons. Dyson Dungeons runs a Dungeons and Dragons show Sundays, like 3 Sundays a month, at 2:00 Eastern Daylight Time, which is what it is now. It's not 2:00 Eastern Daylight Time now. It's Eastern Daylight Time now. It's daylight saving time. So that's the time zone we're in. And it's with a live chat on Twitch. And you can catch all of the old episodes, old in that they've already, been on Twitch. The previous episodes, I'll call them. You can catch the previous episodes on YouTube and also as podcast. It works as a podcast. It's that show is like stuff's going on all the time. There's good monologues and dialogues, and sometimes our DM does an amazing job of like being 3 different characters. And it's really impressive. Her acting skills are really good, and that makes for a very amazing show, which you should definitely watch, because it's what Dyson Dungeons is all about, is the D&D show. And this stream, Relaxing Painting, or in this case, Frustrating Sanding, with Dyson Dungeons, started because we, on the show, have really amazing dungeons that are made out of really amazing dungeon tiles that we produce in the 3D printers back here. And painted them and decided that why not? If we're painting them anyway, let's put us a cheap ring camera and an extra microphone that we had laying around, and maybe people would enjoy watching us do that. It was us at the beginning, Nicole and I, but then it became my show because Nicole had other things to do. And I'm retired and, I don't have anything to do, nothing else to do in my entire life. Not true. That's why there's been gaps in the streaming of this, because of like traveling and seeing family and doing things with one's life. Anyway, so that's how that started. But the important part is the Dungeons and Dragons show, which you really, really should catch, because it's really pretty fun and amazing. Our DM put together I guess it's called homebrew, right? We do pretend to drink ale sometimes on this show, but other than that, there's no brewing involved. But the world is just really beautiful. It's beautifully constructed. And the places we visit are imaginative and lots of fun. Even the sewers, where we have, for some reason, we end up in sewers a lot. Even the sewers are really pretty cool. Anyway, the show is really good, and the dungeon tiles that we produced and painted here are really good, and you should catch it. And probably the best way to do that is to go to Dyson Dungeons and see some of them on YouTube. And if you like what's going on, then you can catch up with all of the previous episodes. You can do that, or at least most of them. And then you can become a fan and watch our show with live chat, or keep up with it as episodes are produced and put up on YouTube and podcasts. And this Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons will continue most Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from about 10 until 2 Eastern Time, whether standard or daylight saving, depending, on the time of the year. Have been frequent interruptions for family visits and travel. So, for example, like next week, I'll be here on Monday, hopefully unmasking the submarine. I'm looking forward to doing that. Unmasking and maybe even finishing the last little bits of it. Okay, I can't promise, but I'm hoping that it's warm enough that my well-ventilated area works for my spray painting on the hull, and that I can finish it up, show it off on Monday. But following that, we have an opportunity to go on a voyage to see the eclipse, hopefully in a place where it will be, not cloudy, not sunny, because during the eclipse it's definitely not sunny, right? So I can't say it's sunny, but not clouded over. And so we're going to do that, and we will be away for some time. 2.5 weeks, I think. At least I'll be away during that time. Not doing this, not doing frustrating sanding with Dyson Dungeons during that time. This is ending up looking a lot better than it was, but I don't think it's perfect. I'm hoping it's not just a frustrating exercise in just being almost, but not quite okay. I know this is much better. There was a big bump and a ridge there, and it's pretty much gone now, which is kind of shocking. I mean, something during frustrating sanding is actually not awful. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to get this out, and I'm going to polish. I'm going to be polishing the parts that I sanded. This is extremely fine grit emery cloth. And it should get rid of any scratch marks that were left over by the other sandpaper. It's worked pretty well for me in the past, and it holds up better than even the really fine grit. Fine grit sandpaper. I've even been able to polish clear plastic with this. That was kind of had a Phantom Mustang. Some of you might be familiar with that model. The old monogram model. I had one of the originals when it first came out, the Phantom Mustang. My dad actually built it because at my age, just couldn't do it. Just made a mess, right? Especially the tube cement on all that clear plastic. So he built it, but then they reissued it, I think back in the 90s sometime. And I got one of the reissues and built it, and it came out really pretty well. But I managed to get a drop of cement on one of the wing surfaces. And it's like, oh my God, right there on the top of the wing, that's going to be just horrible. And it could have been. But I was actually able to use this really fine grit emery cloth. I was actually able to use this and polish it out. I was kind of shocked at the fact that was actually successful. That was a long time ago. Wow. I built that thing, geez, it must be like 15 years ago. I know it might not, for me, feel that long ago, but yeah, it was probably. This is just weirdly lumpy here. Supposedly, by using a sanding block on a flat surface like that, the high points will be sanded and the low points not. And the result should be a smooth surface. That's the theory, at least, behind a sanding block. Which is why I'm using it, at least in theory, right? You go with the hypothetical and hope it works. Well, compared to where I started, this is actually, this is pretty okay. And I'm just going to keep rubbing at this for a little while yet, because it's not perfect, but it's just way, way better than it was. I wasn't sure when I started this here that I would be able to make it work. It might be feathered enough now and so gradual that it won't be visible. Still there's some going on there. Too much pressure just on the wrong spot. I think that was the cardboard that made that noise, not the normal. What I don't want to do is what I did with the submarine a couple of times is do this kind of thing and then put pressure in the wrong spot and have it break. There was one part of the submarine, one of the decks, I attached it, seriously, it took 3 times. I had to do it 3 times before I finally got it to where it was pretty good. It's still not great, but it's much better than it was initially. I had to do a lot of modifications to get that particular piece of the submarine at the top deck where the missiles shoot out, right? Where the missile hatches are, to match the rest of the hull. And I didn't go far enough. There's still a gap there, but at some point it was like, I just can't keep at this. Something wrong will happen. But this cement, I have to say that this cement is working way better than the other did. I'm not going to get into brand names or anything like that, but I'll just say it's better. It's just holding much better. It's just like spackling on a wall, You can see it, but it's a color difference and not a surface difference. And I'm hoping that that's the case there. won't know until I prime this how well it actually came out. But then, that's okay. I mean, if I need to, I can sand down the primer and do other corrective action on it. There was a big gap there, and the filler is filling it in. But when I run a fingernail over it, I can feel that it's not hard. Okay, it's still. You can see it here. The color change, and it's okay if there's a little bit of a seam there, as long as it's uniform across, because these are different components of the rocket. But it's like, what's going on here? Why? Why is that turning dark? When all I'm doing is polishing it. And I think it's because the filler is soft. Okay. And it's like catching an edge, kind of. But I can definitely feel it. It's not like a smooth surface that I would like to have. The gap is definitely going to show. And over here, some of the filler definitely came out. Because it filled the gap, okay? But it didn't hold up to sanding. I'm really not going to know how that looks until I prime it and just see if that's like a tolerable kind of thing, or whether I need to do something more about it. I got about a half hour here. It virtually disappeared with this sandpaper, but not with the polishing. I don't know. Let me try this brand of 2000 grit polishing paper. This might work better. Gives it the same sort of sheen as the original plastic, which is good. That means that I'm not dealing with problems of different texture. At least that. All right. I'm going to say that this is feeling there now. This is getting ready for priming time. And as I said, I've got this, I mean, it's always possible to, you just resand the prime and reprime it. As long as the feathering on the edges is good, it shouldn't show. It's a lot better than it was, but it's still not great. I don't know, just worry at this, just fiddle with this a little bit longer. This is where the two parts, I mean, they did not match. It was like 1/100th of an inch, at least that much, which in a model like this that's going to be painted gloss is a lot in terms of visibility. But those two parts were like 1/100th of an inch off, but could feel it, could actually see it. Now they're a lot closer, but there's still a bump there. Pretty much, it's not feathered down perfectly yet. Or at least, I mean, not perfect. I'm not going to get it perfect, but really good. It's not B+ work yet. It's like in the B range, mid B. Yeah, on this side, it's pretty decent here on this side. My left thumb, it feels okay. My right thumb, it didn't feel that great. Okay. Now the painting thing on this whole thing is going to be painted that glossy white. I'm going to use the pearl white, including the inside here, which I'm a little surprised about because the inside of the other panels are painted like a greenish gray. I have to find that color yet. But this little stripe here, this strip here, is part of a rocket fuel line. That needs to be painted silver and have really, really beautiful, clear demarcation lines here and here. That's black, and the inside of this is black, and that edge has to be absolutely perfect as well. So that'll be interesting to do. But I think this is ready now to be primed. It's just messy here. There's a messy bit up here. And the priming will show me whether there are still, noticeable flaws in the parts that I filled and sanded. And if there are, then I will use a different kind of filler, because neither the plastic putty nor the spackling worked really well. So I'm going to set this aside for a moment. Then I'm going to whine about how difficult this is going to be to assemble, because it will be. And these rocket motors, where's the other one here? I did some painting there once. They go together like this. And then this is a painting challenge for the future. They go in here like this. I'm going to paint the inside of this. I'm not sure what color, but anyway, they go on like this. And then when this needs to be spray painted, I'll need to mask over these nozzles, mask the nozzles so that they don't get painted. So I'm going to paint the outside of the nozzles and paint the inside of the cone, and then just mask the whole thing at that point, right on up to these little holes, which is the top of the escape tower. so that I can paint. When I spray paint the whole thing, these won't get painted, And these, oh my, I thought I was done with these. No. You know what I was doing here? All the frustrating sanding. Yeah, the same is true of the outsides of all of these nozzles. Apparently, I filled them in. I filled in their halves that are come together, and they're supposed to not have any discontinuity. I filled them in, and I haven't sanded them. So, yeah, great. On a much smaller scale, they're little and hard to hold on to. On a much smaller scale, I'll be doing exactly what I had been doing with the Escape Pod rocket, like this. Yay. I want to do one more thing other than this yet on this stream. I'm going to do it on the stream because I want to get it done. I want to test the Autobody Putty for its ability to fill in, harden, and be sandable. Okay, because so far, I mean, that's going to be a major thing. Is making these things look seamless where there are seams, is to have them not be seam. Have the seams not be seen. I want a seamless look, despite the fact that there are seams. I want them to not be seen, and I need to remember to do that. So what I have here is I tested the cement, right? And there's like little gaps and things here that I'm going to test with the Autobody Putty. Glazing and spot putty fills pinhole scratches, minor dings, and hairline cracks. And I've got pinholes and hairline cracks. I've got those things. It's flammable. Look, don't stick it in your eye and don't eat it. Okay, those are some of the cautions. Don't do those things. I've got a seal up here. Let me find a pokey thing. Here. Those pin drills. I've got a pokey thing here. I want to do yuck. What's on, and whatever is on there is sticking to this, and probably something that should stick to other things. I don't want big hole in here. I want fairly small holes. I want a lot of Autobody Putty coming out. This stuff is red. It's like rust red, right? Like that. Ooh, it's definitely got solvents in it. I'm going to do some thick applications here in this gap. This is not the tool to use for that. Yeah, well, this should be used in a well-ventilated space, right? This is supposed to, according to the reviews, this hardens in like minutes, which would be kind of nice. You can see where it is anyway. It's not white. That's kind of good. Let me see what I can do about, these are numbers that are imprinted on here. I'm going to fill around it and see what it does in terms of sanding down so that that's a smooth surface instead of having raised surfaces on it. It's not designed for this exactly, but let me see. What I want is, okay, here, this is where I tried to spackle, but there's like pinholes there. Out. There we go. is I'm going to fill these in here. And then I'll sand that down and see how it goes. If this is really nice and hard, and it dries really hard, and then sands to like a shiny metal surface, like it should look like the metal, because this is for auto bodies, which are made out of metal, or usually, not always, but usually. I may end up very carefully applying it, probably with like the tip of the toothpick, to the remaining little pinhole kinds of things that appear on the model that I'm working on. Now it's all liquid. It's coming out much more liquid than I had been. Anyway, we'll let that set up between now and some other time in the future. I wonder if you're supposed to like squeeze this in order to mix it. Yeah, there's a lot of it here. I love that. You have to read these little limitations, right? Except where prohibited by law, 3M will not be liable for any loss or damage arising from the 3M product, whether direct, indirect, special, incidental, or consequential, regardless of the legal theory asserted. In other words, if you use this stuff, you're on your own. You know, don't even bother calling a lawyer because, you know, regardless of any legal theory they might come up with, 3M isn't going to do anything for you. Anyway, it's all kind of squishy, but I'll see how this sets up, you know, and how it dries, and then do some sanding on it. See how hard it is to sand. It might be, I don't know, if it's really hard, it might be hard to sand. But it might be what I'll need to do to get the remaining little imperfections, pinholes, and hairline cracks, as they call them, in this model. I think I've done a pretty decent job of. There's still an issue here. What have I got left? I've got like 15 minutes, so I'm still gonna mess around with this a little bit. You know, since I've noticed that there's just an issue. Where was it? Here. Here, this edge here, where it's still a little bit high up compared to the other side. So I think this is, and there's still a lump there. This is better than it was when I started, without a doubt. So I've made improvements to what will eventually be the appearance of this. Not perfect, but it's moving from like C territory into a solid B. And maybe with a little bit more work, maybe not too terribly much more, but a little bit more work, it might move into the B plus area that I'm aiming for. In terms of how it's going to end up looking when it's done. And then the important part is to, when it comes time to display these, is to put it under fairly dim light, you know, the kind of light where it looks like it's bright, but it's not, like you get in museums. okay, where it looks like it's really well lit, but it's still kind of dim. That's the kind of lighting it needs to look at. And it needs to be put in like a location or a case where you can't get too close to it. And then it'll look really great under kind of dimmish lighting at a distance. And I'm just going to take, I'm going to take 5 minutes to just continue to kind of grind away at these spots here, and then polish it and then finish up. So I will be back on Monday at 10, and hopefully on Monday, I'm really hoping that I will be able to spray paint the hull of the submarine, that it will go pretty well. And on Monday, there will be an unmasking and final assembly and touching up of the Renwall submarine, and I'll spend way too much time doing that, but it'll be like almost like a celebration event, because it was going on for so long. Wow, this stuff really has a strong odor. If I use this in any kind of quantity, or ever again, I'm going to put a fan in the room. The microphone will mask the fan. You won't hear it, but I'm definitely going to put a fan in the room to do that. So it's not right under my nose anyway. There's not much of it, so I'm not too terribly worried about it, but it's stage 2, whatever that is. But it has a strong smell, so you certainly know if it's in the room. Getting to talk, and then I'm not, I haven't talked about TV shows, I haven't talked about cartoons, I haven't talked about TV antennas, I haven't even talked much about the Apollo program. This has been, I don't know. If you catch these on YouTube, I wouldn't recommend this episode. I'll just be honest. At least I'll be honest, right? And I'll just say this is not the best episode. Putting the masking tape on the submarine hull, which I did on Wednesday, I have to say that was actually, it was actually kind of entertaining because, it was like as I was moving along, I kept discovering things that could have been done better. And there were a number of oopses where I'd forgotten to do something just as I said, I'm about done. And then I'd look and then I'd find out that I wasn't. So that was the Wednesday episode. If you're watching this one, well, this is at the end of it, so it doesn't do you any good. But this one has been, it took, like 2 hours to mask the submarine hull for some reason. But this is just taking forever. And I have to say, it's looking okay, but I'm just not sure. Guess I'll be, like I said, I'll find out after I prime it and give it one more go around. Give it a priming and then see how it looks. This is the part that has all the seams on it. They're all on here. So, except for the rocket nozzles, which are a special case. So if there are flaws, this is going to be the opportunity to practice with different kinds of fillers and stuff. And then up here, like I said, I might try to paint that silver and then very carefully mask it so that there's a nice clean line. Because if I just freehand it, no matter how well I do, there's going to be an issue. So I think I might actually paint that. I might actually paint that and mask it before I prime it, because that would give me an indication of whether or not that technique works. This could end up with like 4 coats, who knows, like 4 coats of paint on it and become unrecognizable. Okay, so on Monday, I'm going to unmask the submarine one way or the other. I'm going to somehow get it painted this weekend. And then I'm also going to return to this, do a little bit more polishing on it. I had that, but it's still lumpy there. Still unacceptably lumpy right here. But I'm not going to mess with that anymore because I'm almost out of time. I think what I need to do then is I'll remember to sand down these rocket nozzles, and I'm going to paint them. Sand them down. Before I assemble them, I'm going to paint them the steel color that I'm going to be using, and then the rocket nozzles will be completed. And then I'm going to maybe practice doing some assembly. We'll see how things turn out. I may end up. This is what I should have remembered. I had this. There's a nice hairline crack there that I could have used with the auto body putty. Yeah. So I'm gonna just keep plugging away at that with the sandpaper bits and auto body putty and fillers and things like that, testing and trying different things out to see if they're going to work. Because I'm just not sure what will or what won't. That's part of what this stream is all about. It's a voyage of discovery. Oh, discovery. Star Trek references. That's not what they were. That was accidental. Yeah, just trying different things out, trying to get them to work, and playing with different assembly kinds of issues and stuff like that. And eventually I'll be putting some paint on this and continuing to work at it, see what kind of flaws are still there. But as you can see that I have really nice little bits of masking tape that if I can get them on just right and just perfectly on here, that if I painted that silver ahead of time, this isn't the masking tape I'm going to use. I'm just fiddling with it as I talk about what I'm going to do. It will at least give me a nice clean line, or at least if it's on there well. That's why it's called masking tape. It should mask it so that when I spray paint it, it'll be masked and not get paint on it. It's a tiny, tiny little ridge. I actually tried this once in the submarine model. I tried it with the pipes on the floor of the machine room, and it didn't work. But then I wasn't spray painting it. I was brushing on, and that it sometimes doesn't work when you brush on. There's just enough there to grab it. So the trick is to get it so it doesn't, you don't want it on the bottom, right? So the trick is to get it so it only masks the raised portion and doesn't mask any of the area underneath. that'll be it. Anyway, that should take the better part of like a half hour or something on the stream. Anyway, thank you for watching Frustrating Sanding with Dyson Dungeons today. Yeah, I know this actually looks pretty good. Even on camera, it looks pretty decent. I'm still feeling little flaws and finding little flaws on it, just because it's not perfect yet. It's not B+ yet. But I don't know how far away it is from that until I do probably some final polishing and then painting it and then seeing what it looks like after it's primed. So what I'm going to try, though, I'm going to paint this silver and then mask it and prime it and see how that works. This little bit down here is painted black. It's a circle. Masking that is going to be impossible. I will just say that. It will be an impossibility to mask that, at least for me. And I'll just have to paint that freehand as also the inside of this nozzle. Yep, there's that. These need cleaning up. This whole thing needs to be assembled. If it just gets to be too much of a problem, I'm going to abandon this and move on to the service module, just as a heads up. Because the service module, okay, I mean, if you look at it, the service module has seams, but they're hinges, okay? So they're meant to come apart. The only parts really that I see is this one tank here. I look at, and the rocket nozzle. These are the only two parts that look like they have seams. Well, okay, yeah, right. There's little bits like this. That's gonna. There aren't too many. Here, 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 and these little bits here. These little bits. If they're painted flat black, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room in terms of. Yeah, I'm looking at the paint chart. Gold? The inside of this is supposed to be painted gold? Really? I'm baffled by that. Yeah, I'm going to have to look at the pictures on top. Why would they be painted gold? Light green. I need to get the light green paint. Oh, well, I'm going to work on this again on Monday. We'll just see how it comes out. I'm not prepared to prime this yet. There's a little more work I want to do on it before that happens. But it's getting close. It might be close. And then the assembly of this is just going to be a thing, getting this done. Maybe I will follow the directions and attempt to do half of it, two sides of it, using this as a prop, and get this on. Supposedly, if these three parts came together, that they would all be oriented right. I'm not sure. That is a yet to be seen kind of thing. All right, I'm done for today. Thanks for joining in. Come back on Monday for more for submarine completion. I hope. I'm really, really hopeful that I will get myself up and do what needs to be done on the submarine and get the hull spray painted, so that, barring some sort of real disaster, I've only had minor disasters with the submarine so far. Barring some major thing, that will be done.
That will be an accomplishment. So come back on Monday. Let's see what happens. In the meantime, take care. Be sure to watch all of the former past episodes of Dungeons and Dragons with Dyson Dungeons. Be absolutely sure to do that. It's worth your while and time. And join in again on Monday at more or less 10 o'clock. Thanks. See you then.